Hi guys, this is Creative Cuts, a channel where I build, paint and create things. In today's video I'm going to buy a broken toy that I bought from a local charity shop into a piece of terrain that you could use as a centerpiece on a sci-fi tabletop game such as Warhammer 40,000. I saw this toy and it immediately jumped out at me because it had some great surface detail and it looked like it would kind of proportionately work at around a sort of 28mm scale. It also came with a kind of base, so I thought, perfect, I can build something around this. Maybe a tower-like structure to launch this space shuttle from. So I took some thin plywood to use as a base and began to draw the approximate shape out. Then I took some graphics pad, which is basically thick compressed card. It is a great material to work with, as you will see. I measured out some squares and cut these to size. I also drew a circle in the centre to accommodate some piping to run through it. Using a hole cutting bit on my power drill, I cut a hole and sanded down the edges with an old nail file to tidy things up a little. Then I took some empty vitamin bottles I've been collecting and glued these together with some hot glue. I took some embroidery mesh and using my squares as a template, cut out some squares to add some texture to my platform. I glued these together and then cut out the central hole, taking my time and trying to be as neat as possible. I threaded these onto my vitamin tubes and glued these into place, using the table to help keep everything straight. Well, this toy was in pretty good shape. Some parts didn't fit together too well anymore. I didn't want to get into heavy gap filling, but I did glue some parts together just to help keep them shut. Then I made some I-beams from thin strips of graphics padding, glued these together. I got this tip a long time ago from a hobby legend, Wylock's Armory. Great channel, go check it out if you're not familiar with him. This was a little fiddly, but I made a bunch of these one evening while watching a movie. So I had plenty to play with and made them in a range of sizes so I could add them to my stockpile to use in the future. I used my platforms as a guide and marked out the sizes I would need. And then in the spirit of steel work, I put on some safety glasses and attached a mini saw blade to my Dremel and cut these down to size. I glued the larger size into place to act as support for my platforms. This gave the platforms a sense of weight and stability. Then I took some garden mesh. I have a giant roll of this which I picked up from the local garden centre, so basically a lifetime supply of ladders. I cut these to length with some snips and bent them into shape to act as a ladder to connect to my platforms. I glued these into place with some super glue and some activator spray to instantly cure the super glue. Then I carefully cut some lengths of my I-beam and began building the support structure between the platforms. For the diagonal beams, I carefully cut away a little at a time until I had a good fit. I would dry fit each piece to check everything was looking good and then glued it into place. This all took some time, but once it was all glued together, I was really happy with the result. to finish off the top and add some necessary safety features, I added little handrails to the top and also glued these into place. I fixed the already primed Space Shuttle into place just to provide even more rigidity and keep everything nice and solid. I added a little container from a packet of mints that I had kept and put in my box of useful bits, just to break up the very uniform shape a little. Then with some sculptor mould I bedded the base down and built up some rock shapes around the launch pad. I then sealed everything with some Mod Podge so that the cardboard and plaster would have a solid seal to accept paint nicely. I also put down a layer of PVA glue and sprinkled some fine sand and bits of rubble on the surface to begin to build the base textures. I lightly sprinkle my mix on, and then give it another mist of diluted PVA on top to lock everything into place. Then it was time to start applying some colour. I wasn't fully sure which way I would take this build at this stage, whether to build something clean with a neat paint job or something a bit more weathered. But I started blocking in some colours with some acrylic paints in the hope that my question of which way to go would resolve itself as things start to take shape. I thought I could add a little weathering here and there just to give it a sense of usage and age, so I reached for some masking fluid. This is a liquid latex paint, which once dry can be rubbed off to reveal the paint underneath. Great for chipping effects or rust. So I started to apply this with a sponge and then a brush when necessary. I painted over this with a pale blue. I chose this colour because I thought it would go with the orangey brown of the rust really nicely. I applied this as badly and unevenly as I could to begin to suggest decay or corrosion. And the more I played with this idea, I became clear on the overall direction. My line of thought was that this space shuttle is pretty much a technological relic by today's standards, but in a post-apocalyptic sci-fi setting, it could be seen as something really ancient. So I fully embraced this line of thinking and went with a paint job that had pretty much been destroyed by the elements. I chipped off and added paint to start creating layers of rust. chose a bright orange to act as a focal point for the worst instances of corrosion. I then added a few layers of browns and oranges with my airbrush. This gives a different paint application and only adds to the layered build-up of decay. I added a wash all over and pretty much let this find its own path, blending with a brush as needed. Once this was dry, I started to apply an oil-based wash, using oil paint with lots of thinner. I left tiny areas with more pigment, then used a very dilute wash to draw the pigment downwards using gravity to naturally blend the colours together. I repeated this several times, varying the amount of paint I used, and this really helped me build up the appearance of many layers. I further enhanced some of these streaks with a wonderful range of products from AK Interactive. These are enamel-based paints, and when thinned, really suspend the pigments beautifully. I then got some dark green reindeer moss and started to glue little tufts of this into place. I'd been doing a little bit of gardening recently and pulled up some plants that had died and kept the root balls to dry out. I carefully selected small roots and wound these round the model. There was no real plan where to place these. I just started off with small pieces and slowly let it grow organically. a vine here and a tuft of moss there, and slowly it all started to come together. I added little sprinkles of flock here and there to imply the build-up of moss over time and help bring together the base with the rest of the model. Next I added some rust from Dirty Down, which if you're familiar with my channel, you know is one of my favourite products, purely because of the effect it gives. And finally, to give a sense of flaking rust, I ground up some chalks to make some pigment powder and brushed this on to the heavier bits of rust. Because of the high level of pigment in the chalks, there was really no need to fix this into place. If you like what you've seen, you can support the channel by subscribing to stay up to date with all the latest videos. You can help the YouTube algorithm by hitting the like button and leaving your thoughts and feedback in the comments section below. I always love reading your thoughts and also let me know if there's anything specific that you'd like me to attempt to build. This piece of terrain started with a simple trip to the charity shop. I found a cool toy and had the start of an idea, which developed into something that I never would have imagined at the beginning. Trust your sense of imagination and have courage to think outside the box, and you may even surprise yourself. Enjoy.